Welcome back, everyone. Here we are, middle of September, and I just want to say a few words about the move that we're seeing in uranium and maybe try and help make a bit of sense of what's going on. So I want to start in a bit of an unorthodox way with a bit of a spoiler alert, in that I'm about to say that most of what I say probably won't matter, at least in the short to medium term. But I'll explain why, and yes, I will be mentioning names later in the video. It's just when you look at what's going on very short term, very day to day, what's happening, markets open, oh, this is up, that's up, that's up. It's not clear how discerning the market is being about what's going on. You know, there's some obvious mistakes, and I'll show you one that I believe is an obvious mistake in a few seconds. There's some obvious mistakes and the market just doesn't care about. So if we're talking about which company is the best value based on a few, which is cheaper, I don't think the market is currently being that discerning. Maybe it will be in the medium term, maybe it will be in the long term, but the short term kind of rules the day in stuff like this. So just be cognizant that I can give you what mathematically makes sense and what I believe is the best value, but that's not to say it will perform any better than the worst value or the dumbest stuff. But to be clear, I am not suggesting buying the stupid stuff or the stuff that you think the fastest money will go into. Why is that? Well, let's just say that you might not be the first person to have that thought. So there's often a lot of these situations where people might think, okay, well, the fast money will pour into this, but the market already knows that and why it's given a more premium valuation to other things. So there's a bit of a trade-off there that always has to be thought of. It's a bit of a mind twister, but I'm just saying, I have my source or my direction that I will head with what I own, what I buy. Might not be the right one, but I have reasons why I think it is, or that others might serve me worse if I did them. Now, a question that I'm sure gets asked a whole lot, I haven't gotten it much recently because I haven't been posting much recently, is it too late? Too late to buy, too late to add to uranium, too late. I would say no, but. So no, I think there are a number of things that are still fundamentally defensible to buy and add and hold for while this plays out. There's other things that I think is momentum defensible to buy and add when, hold as long as the momentum continues. But I think there are other things besides. There are stuff that you can buy, well, that I would think that is viable, but there's other things that, let's just say they've passed my point of where I'd be interested in buying them. But again, everything depends on you. What's your goal? What's your timeline? What's your price target for uranium? What's your margin of safety? What's your risk tolerance and all that stuff? And remember, and I'll probably say this again, this is not investment advice. This is just my opinion. Okay, so let's start with why I'm saying there's some obvious mistakes that the market just doesn't care about. Well, Energy Resources of Australia used to be a uranium stock, used to be a relevant uranium stock, although the degree to which they had spot leverage was questionable for a while now. But their mine closed. They're shutting down Ranger and it's heading for reclamation. So they're basically sitting on a pile of cash, and the cash will essentially be used for reclamation. Now, there are some uranium-related potential assets there, but when the market cap moves $500 million overnight, because that is a similar percentage to what other uranium stocks are moving, I think that what's happened here is it seems pretty likely to me that the fast-paced movement of flows, either from funds chasing, people remembering, oh, this used to be a uranium stock, buy that. Whatever the reason, funds moved quickly. They bid it up. And realistically, doesn't seem like the most uranium stock, and definitely doesn't seem like the uranium stock with the most leverage going forward. But things move quickly, and the market may make mistakes. Maybe I'm completely wrong on this, but moving up 500 million in a day on a pile of cash because it's uranium related seems highly questionable. Now, as promised, I said I would talk about some reasonable ideas. And for me, again, obvious disclosure, I own many of the names that I discuss in this video, including two of these, which I believe at this point would be, although they're not the most leveraged, although they're not the tight float thing that's going to go to the moon tomorrow, I believe they're two of the better values in the space. Now, that may say something about my overall price target, probably does, but just generally, I think that if you look at multiple risk, reward potential, and here is my problem again, assuming that the market might have some logic at some point. I'm not expecting either of these to be a top performer, but I do think that particularly Kazatomprom and Physical still offer attractive entry points. I still think that they, especially we're talking Physical, needs to go what some could call significantly higher and earn pretty decent returns over the next few years compared to, like, let's call it the S&P. And I think Kazatomprom is one that does still offer you a little bit of leverage, and it's not really that expensive even at $30 uranium. So if we're thinking uranium's going much higher, which a number of the other equities seem insistent on, well then Kazatomprom is exceptionally cheap at the current price and actually offers leverage because they actually produce uranium, something that not all of the other equities actually will do, and many won't in the time that is relevant. So I think these are two central ideas for portfolio these days. But I know most of you are looking at these videos for more speculative ideas, for the thing that's going to go up more. And here's what I can tell you. Mathematically, of the field that I look at, there are two that are cheaper, far cheaper than the rest, and then there's a third that's far cheaper than some of the more popular names, but again, who cares? Anyway, the two that are the cheapest in my research are Forces and Vimy. So those are the two. They offer more leverage because they're cheaper. Hopefully they could utilize that leverage, or hopefully they can be taken out at the right time by someone who wants to utilize that leverage. In either case, those are the two that seem to offer the best value. And then their third is Global Atomic, which still is pricing in under $50 uranium, well under if you consider that the zinc asset might have some value, and most other uranium equities are more aggressive. So yeah, it again might not matter, but if I was looking to add leverage, this would be the place I would start looking. There are some other interesting things. I still have positions in Bannerman, for example, which if the price were to continue accelerating at this pace, they might have to look at a Tango 20 instead of a Tango 8, or someone else might look at it, and that suddenly offers more leverage. But again, price matters, and we'll have to see where the price of uranium is and where the target is and try and figure out leverage. Also want to say that things are moving too quickly for me to say, okay, this is a good buy and everything else is not, or anything like that, because tomorrow there could be a 30% change in what's good value. This is just me looking at what I think today makes the most sense. So on the subject of explorers, yes, I have a few. I've mentioned some in the past in some videos, but they're not really an area where I would consider logical. Sure, they may offer more torque if they find something. They're also not guaranteed to actually find anything, and there's a lot of more time and uncertainty around that. If that's your game, sure. I'm not really going to talk about specific names here, so much as to say that they could offer a lot of leverage if they find something. But if they don't, you have to realize that they're not actually uranium stocks in something other than by name. Now, this is definitely not the easiest world to live in. If you're buying explorers, you need to know that it's quite high risk. Could it be high reward? Yes. Is it similar to compounding a bet, making two bets that need to pay off together? Yes and no. So yes, in that they would outperform if uranium goes up and they find something. No, in that, well, they may just be carried also partially by name. However, it seems like the market has decided they will underperform it versus just being carried by having uranium in the name. But if they find something, they could do great. So that's just kind of what needs to be understood when it comes to explorers. I think their pricing amongst themselves is relatively similar. I don't see any standout, ooh, wouldn't touch that because it's expensive, or standout, that's great value, because value is insanely arbitrary when it comes to explorers. So what really matters is management and assets. So there are some good managements out there. There are also some that I would call 10-foot pole managements, and well, you can probably guess why. I'm not going to name names because I'm sure you could guess why. But that's what I have to say about explorers. Now, I've said this before, and I do want to reiterate. It's important to realize that spot price and equities are two different things. They're related to each other, but again, there are different factors that move them, and they're looking at different things, pricing in different things, and trying to account for different stretches of reality. So it's important to realize that there shouldn't be a direct correlation between one and the other. So I wanted to end off on a cheery note. Frauds and scams. So I first want to say that I'm not the authority on speaking, and I don't have or want a monopoly on what's being said. I've been wrong a bunch, and I will continue to be wrong in the future. Guaranteed, unfortunately. Much prefer being right. But what I can say personally, and I invite you to be as skeptical about whatever I say as you want, I've never intentionally misled people. And don't get me wrong, there are plenty of other people who are, as far as I know, in the same boat. But at the same time, I would say beware of frauds and scams. There are some people, some entities out there that when I look at them, and many people, if you ask around, you might get some ideas of who they might be. Many people who will essentially use you and discard you, and use your money for their purposes and get out. Now, some of them are highly competent at that. Others are incompetent, but just seem suited to being helpful. But my point is, be cautious, be careful, be skeptical, and look, if it helps, like, be skeptical of what I say. I'm just some random person on YouTube. Just be careful of everyone, including me. Even though, like I said, I don't mislead, but someone virtually identical could. So while I reiterate that this is not investment advice, I wanted to add a very important point, and that is to remember that this is not a forever investment. This is not something you can buy and hold, because it will reach a point where all that's left in returns is FOMO. And there will be a point. Now, do I think that fundamentally the spot price is anywhere near that? No. But it's important to remember that people will be wrong, I will be wrong, and the market will figure out what's going on before most individuals. So, you know, if you're hang on too long, there will probably be a point where many of the equities will fall more than 50%, and many will never regain that drop. And that's just how it works. So more in line with there will be a point where you need to be careful. There will be a point where you need to risk manage. Do I think that fundamentally when we're looking at spot price at that point is now or soon? No, but I also don't think that all of what we've seen in the equities is justifiable. And you've seen some examples, and I'm sure you could probably find more if you look closely at the equities. So even if uranium is different, and it is in many ways, the market is moving fast, and there's a lot of factors beyond what seems to matter at this point. So it's important to think and remember, parting words that I will give you is, we may not be exactly where you think we are. We're probably not exactly where I think we are. Whether we're ahead of that or behind that, well, that depends where you think we are, and where you think the market thinks that we're going, because all of that matters. So with that, I will wish you all luck, and until next time, have a great day.